Esports was supposed to be the next billion-dollar industry. Teams raised mountains of cash, leagues promised global domination, and investors thought they were buying into the NFL of Gen Z. But today, teams are collapsing. Logos that once filled arenas disappeared overnight, or they're being sold for very low amounts of money. Now here's the kicker, I predicted it publicly. 11 days after I posted it, 3 major organizations folded. So how do we go from a billion-dollar dream to a fire sale reality? Stick with me because here is the full story. First, let's rewind. In the early 2000s, esports teams weren't businesses, they were clans. Kids in hoodies, CRT monitors, and dusty LAN parties. Then streaming changed everything. Twitch and YouTube turned competitive gaming into entertainment. Millions weren't just playing, they were also watching. League of Legends, Counter-Strike, and Dota alike. They built global stages and teams started to professionalize, jerseys, sponsors, and contracts. The dream was simple. If it looks like sports, maybe it becomes sports. And sometimes the industry knows, or as calls it quite often, traditional sports. And that's the seed that grew into esports teams as we know them. So to recap, teams started as clans, streaming made them mainstream, and then the dream became, let's build the next NFL. Here's where things go wild. 2016 to 2018 was a massive gold rush. Investors poured money in, NBA owners, NFL franchises, football clubs, all buying esports slots. League of Legends and Overwatch launched franchising, and teams dropped $20 to $30 million or more just to get in. Suddenly, players were on 6-figure minimum salaries, teams were living in Hollywood content mansions, Lambo videos, high-end productions, private chefs, and the works. Every deck said the same thing. Esports will be bigger than the Super Bowl. For a while, it seemed to work. Viewership boomed, brands lined up, and orgs trended on YouTube. But there was one tiny problem. And that problem itself is the thing that is quite often killing these esports teams. The revenue never caught up to the hype. Most orgs rely on sponsorships, sometimes 80% of all their revenue. Merchandise was tiny, ticket sales were rare, and league revenue share was basically crumbs. Meanwhile, the costs exploded. Salaries, buyouts, housing, content crews, travel, franchise fees. So you have 2 graphs here, right? Viewership going up, profit going down. COVID gave a short-term bump in 2020. Everyone was stuck at home watching Twitch, and esports felt huge again. But don't remember, these teams weren't playing at live events, so some of those other revenue things, like I mentioned before, simply don't exist. But when the world reopened, the numbers still don't add up. Esports viewership is higher than ever, but more teams than ever are starting to close as they struggle to make revenue or to raise money to keep themselves going. So a recap for you here, esports teams had massive reach, but almost no monetization per fan. So we've gone through the origin, the investment boom, and the cracks starting to appear, and you know what's coming next is the collapse as the dominoes fall. By 2022, the bubble started to burst. Teams were downsizing, salaries got cut, and entire leagues collapsed. And this is where my story comes in. I posted on LinkedIn, esports teams are in serious trouble. 11 days later, 3 dominoes fell. Complexity dropped as Counter-Strike roster. Luminosity sold for $645,000 cash with a bunch of debt that was taken on board as well, which is nothing compared to the hype years. And Guild Gaming, backed by David Beckham as their face, shut down completely. They weren't alone. The Guard folded. CLG, nearly 20 years old, was sold off, and other esports organizations have gone exactly the same way. One by one, these legendary orgs vanished. As we know behind the scenes, others are struggling. This wasn't just bad luck, this was the business model finally collapsing under its own weight. And the scariest part, the core problems still have not been fixed. So, who's still standing? Only the strongest, and not because they're simply winning trophies. FaZe, G2, T1, 100 Thieves, they're not just esports teams anymore, they're media companies. They make creator content, they sell merch like streetwear brands, they partner with lifestyle companies. Winning tournaments, that's just part of their marketing and a small line item. Look at FaZe selling millions of dollars of champion merchandise in a day, or doing a meetup with 3,500 people turning up to see them. 100 Thieves, similar kind of playbook, high ground keyboards, doing millions of dollars in Staples merchandise, as well as winning tournaments on the side. The orgs that adapt, like media studios, are the ones that are surviving. The ones that cling to, we're just a team, they simply don't. Take a look at all the largest teams in the space and you'll realize that they're not just teams anymore. Team Liquid has Liquimedia and Liquipedia as well. Esports isn't just about winning, it's about being a brand. So it sounds like a bunch of doom and gloom, right? What's next? I mean, there are millions of fans watching this, so people are seriously invested, people want to watch these tournaments and games, and people want to have a great time. So here are 3 different paths that I see these organizations taking. Path number 1, hybrid creator organizations. Teams that operate like talent agencies plus studios. Creators, athletes, content, and products all under one roof. An exact example of this would be FaZe Clan. Big on TikTok, big on YouTube, big with creators, but also have that esports base in Call of Duty and CS to keep themselves grounded. Path number 2, smaller local teams. Forget the global mega brands, think regional orgs, community monetization, smaller budgets, but actually profitable. This isn't something that we've seen too much of. I've seen a team or two like this in the US before, and I think in the past with Renegades trying to stake their claim as the boys Australia, they've done some of this as well. But from talking to experts in the space, they agree, and that's what they've been talking to local teams about. A friend of mine, he had a chat to an Italian team and said, lean into that Italian heritage. Get tailored suits, have all of your marketing in your local languages, wear the flag, drape it over your shoulders, be proud and be local to that region. Why fight for the global investment and the global sponsorship dollars when you have to fight against every other team for exactly the same thing? Path number 3, publisher control. And this is the most realistic future. Valve, Riot, Blizzard, they own the IP, they control the leagues, and they take the lion's share of revenue. And teams will increasingly be contractors in their ecosystems. Think about Fortnite, back to the 2019 World Cup. Fortnite handles all of the travel for the players, pays them huge prize pools, handles their accommodation, people to look after them, make sure they're at the right place at the right time. And these are individual players. They don't need massive boot camps. They don't need a whole bunch of tech to be provided to them by teams. And it felt like in that league, the teams really were a hanger-on. Fortnite didn't market the teams at all. They barely talked to the team owners. They didn't seem to care about the teams at all. What they cared about is their game and the players. So maybe that signals something where these publishers are going to start taking more control and maybe block out the teams a little bit more, but that also means that the teams won't have so much overheads and won't have to do so much work in looking after all of these players. Which path wins? We don't know. For the NFL of esports, the dream, is that potentially already dead? So here's the truth. These esports teams aren't dying, they're simply evolving. The current dream of billion-dollar esports teams is over, and the survivors are the ones that act like content companies, creators, and brands, not just teams. I've made some other content recently on LinkedIn as well to talk about some of these teams that are diversifying even away from just content into completely different kinds of companies. If you want proof, remember that I said teams were in trouble, and just 11 days later, Complexity, Luminosity, and Guild proved it. And if you want further proof as well, take a look at my LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/SmithyMayo, and take a look at the amount of esports team management, owners, investors, and previous employees who are liking, commenting, and sharing on my posts. It's glaringly obvious, it's just that no one's really talked about this stuff too much before. The game is not over, it's just that the playbook has changed and things will continue to evolve, just like with any new industry. In some of my next videos, I'll be making some more content about these teams and behind the scenes. I'll be diving into how much these teams cost to run and where they're spending their money, how they make their revenue, how much that revenue is, and from what sources as well. And that should give you a fantastic idea into how a lot of these teams in the past have just been a bleeding bunch of money and why they're trying to change things so rapidly. If you have any other suggestions, let me know down in the comments below. I love making videos about this kind of stuff, as you can probably tell, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.